Thanks, Lou. When the winter season approaches, it's smart to give your yard a little TLC so it survives the season. In this segment, we'll get a few easy tips from experts for taking care of your yard before winter hits. And the best part? You can do these all on your own. First up, Michael Massett from the Growing Place Nursery explains a bit about maintenance for your perennials.
One of the great tasks that you can do in the yard in the fall is actually dividing your perennials. Fall is the perfect time to do the ones that flower in the spring and early summer because they're going to be getting to dormancy pretty soon here. When you divide your perennials, you're going to actually dig the whole clump out. You can take a fork or a sharp knife or a digging shovel and actually divide it that way. You'll get several smaller clumps, but you can also add those smaller clumps to other places in your landscape.
And how do you know when it's time to divide your perennials?
One of the main keys would be just size itself. If it's doubled or tripled in size, it's probably about time that you can divide it. The other thing that can happen sometimes with plants is they can actually get kind of dead towards the middle of them. As the plant kind of grows, it gets wider. So then you replant a nice clump in the middle where the dead spot was.
So if we're not dividing our perennials before winter, what do we need to do to prepare them for the winter season?
A lot of the perennials actually can stay up over the winter. You don't have to do anything to them. Some people do prefer a nicer, tidier look, and so you can clean them up in the fall too. That would be just cutting things back, usually to about 2 or 3 inches above the ground. Certain things actually need to be cut all the way down to the ground though, in order to help prevent some diseases and problems for the following year. Like hostas, for instance, they can get a slug, so you want to cut those all the way down to the ground so that there's no remaining leaves for the slugs to live in over the winter. Also, you might want to think about cutting your peonies back and irises and your lilies as well.
So not only does the garden need to be prepped for winter, but the lawn needs some help too. Tell us your tip for prepping our lawn.
Well, the first one that I always suggest, and is pretty simple to do, is just mow it. You want to make sure that you cut it just a little bit shorter for winter time so it doesn't get matted.
And when would you suggest doing that?
When your weather gets colder and you notice the grass isn't growing quite as much anymore, that's the last time you're probably going to need to cut for the year. You want to aim for, 2.5 inches or so, a little less than 3 for sure. Putting down a fertilizer for winter is a really great step that you can do for your lawn. I like to use the organic fertilizers simply because you're going to get a slower release from them. If you were taking a regular high nitrogen chemical-based product, a lot of that's going to dissipate over winter anyway from rain and snow. A lot of people in the fall are going to be bagging their lawn because there's leaves falling on top of the lawn, and when you take all those grass clippings up from bagging, you're actually removing a lot of the nitrogen that you've put down on the lawn already. If you put down the fertilizer in the fall, you're actually replacing that.
Plants and grass are only part of your yard. Trees often get neglected because they don't seem to need constant maintenance. Well, Tom Tyler, a certified arborist from Bartlett Tree Experts, has a few tips to show your trees a little love too.
Getting them ready for winter, the first and probably the most important thing is to mulch. Using an organic mulch, shredded hardwood in particular, is an excellent mulch. It creates a blanket for your trees going into the winter, it moderates the soil temperature, and then at the end it'll degrade and fertilize the trees. And you just apply it around the base of the tree, about 2 inches thick, keeping it away from the bark of the tree, and then you'll spread it out to as far as you can go, usually about to the drip line would be preferable. The one thing about Arborvitae is that they're usually growing with multiple trunks. In the winter, with snow and ice accumulation, they'll spread apart, so they just fold out. Other times they'll lean, sometimes they bounce back, other times they don't. So what we like to do in preparation for winter is to cable them or tie them together so that there's much less spreading apart in snow.
That makes sense. Can you tell me a little bit more about that process of tying them up?
Sure, there's great products out there. Chainlink, that's made out of plastic actually, and it can be wrapped around the trunks of the tree just to keep them not necessarily really tight, but just to hold them in place and attach them in a lower level of the Arborvitae and then up higher. And that does a great job holding those stems together when it snows.
Well, that's it. 6 easy tips to get your yard prepped for winter. Give it a shot. You'll thank me in the spring.